Yeah. When was the last time you were actually down this way, like down
Uh,
Toronto?
last trip I made was 2018,
Oh,
which was great
beautiful.
actually. I mean, I had a great time. It was the first trip back in 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Because prior to that, my last trip back was in 1993. I hadn't been back since. Um, so I finally, I wanted to take my kids there as well. I wanted to show them where I grew up, where I went, where I lived, where I went to school. And what was really nice is, I mean, because of Facebook and social media, I've reconnected with so many people that
Hmm.
I was at school with. And there's a couple of people that I knew I would see because we've always been in touch over the years. But one of the girls that I knew, she arranged. She said, "Well, let's go to the Legion in Port Credit. We'll get a few people down." So a few people said, "Oh, it'd be nice to meet up, have a drink." And I said, and I couldn't. I was only there 10 days, so I said, "Look, I'm going to be at the Port Credit Legion on this day at this time." I said, "You're more than welcome to turn up." Everybody turned up, and two people came up from the States just for that, which was really touching. And we had a really nice night. It was so nice. Some people I hadn't seen for 40 years.
Really?
Yeah, hadn't seen them since we left school. Um, so that was great. That was I was really touched by it. That people would make such an effort, and it was great. It was so nice. Went to the school and it was open. It was when we were there, August, I think it was, but they had a summer school on, so it was open. So it was nice to walk through the school and see the old classes and look for my old lockers and stuff like that. It was great. It was great. But see the changes that I'd seen in 25 years as well. I mean, that was
Yeah.
Square One was the one that threw me because my memories of Square One was just open fields all around it, and to see it now, it was just unrecognizable at all. And also the
Yeah.
all the condos on the Garden Expressway. That was a surprise as well.
Well, there's a lot more coming next time you show up here.
So
They,
I
they're
understand. I try
they're
to keep
putting up
abreast. You know,
they're putting up condo after condo in places they don't belong, and it's like tearing down these landmarks. Um, Streetsville, right? They have the Barber House that used to be a restaurant, but there was so much controversy they wanted to tear it down because they wanted to build up townhouses, but they built townhouses around it. But sadly, they don't belong there. Like there's some places you shouldn't be. Like you want to build a condo, put a condo. Don't put a condo in front of another person's view of the
yeah,
landscape.
yeah,
I was just discussing that with someone yesterday, where they put up a condo, and let's say you're on the 15th floor, and your view is of Toronto, whatever, and then suddenly they put up another
yeah,
condo, and then your view is as someone else is inside of their condo.
yeah,
They
yeah,
don't even.
yeah. They did this actually in London to my mum. My mum had an apartment where she actually overlooked the Thames, so she had this wonderful view of the Thames. And then they suddenly built a load of houses which completely blocked the view. All she could see then from her window was other houses and
Yeah,
apartments. And it's very wrong when they do that because one of the attractions when you look for a place, so look at that view. But yeah, it was. I mean, the one thing that struck me was with all the expansion that had been going in and around Toronto was the roads were still the same. So consequently, it was just the QEW was just bedlam. And I remember it was I think it was a Sunday. I gone, my wife and my daughter had gone shopping in Square One. So my son wasn't the least bit interested, and nor was I. So I said, "Come on, I'll give you we'll drive around Toronto. I'll show you a few landmarks." And on the way back, I mean, the QE was just packed. So we ended up driving back down Lakeshore. It was much easier, but that was the thing. I thought, well, you're doing all this building, you're putting all these condos up, all these other office blocks. What about the roads? You can't expect a road system that was in the 70s to cope with traffic in the 21st century. It's just
exactly.
no planning, no common sense at all. So that was the first thing that struck me. Well, not the first thing. One of the things that struck me is that the roads were still the same. So it was nice for me because I still knew my way around. But yeah, I mean, I just it's the amount of traffic was again another shock because driving downtown, it just wasn't worth it. In the end, I took the GO train because it just wasn't worth it, and the cost of parking. When I worked downtown, it was $2 a day.
Yeah, but back when you were in high school, I was just entering grade 4 or 5, I think. Because you
Thanks for reminding me how old I am, Chris.
Yeah, it says here that you emigrated to Canada in 1972. So that means that immediately after you emigrated, you attended the high school, right?
Yeah, straight into grade 9. I think we arrived, I think it was something like the 16th or the 17th of September. And it was the following week, I was straight into high school. Literally, I don't think we'd been in the country a week. When my parents were, well, let's get them into school straight away rather than sitting around. Yeah, that was an eye opener because I was at an all boys school in London because secondary education in England starts 2 years earlier. It starts in grade 7. So I'd done 2 years already at high school in England, but it was an all boys school, and it's quite amazing how much girls change from grade 5 to grade 9. So that was the first thing that seeing how girls developed, shall we say. And then the whole system, it was just totally different. But I think the hardest thing was that people had already been at school for a few weeks and they'd already built relationships from public school because I knew no one. And I was just given a map. So there you go, and that's your first class. I didn't have a clue where I was going. Trying to walk around with this map. My first lesson was machine shop. Funny enough, that was the first one after I'd been in there doing all the registration, filling in forms and that. And with Mr. Dougalby, do you remember him?
Yeah, I had him for drafting.
Yeah, he was doing machine shops, and it was a guy called Jim Graham sat in front of me. He turned around and said, "Hi, my name's Jim. What's yours?" And which again was really nice because I knew no one, and he helped me. He said, "What's your next class?" And I said, "Oh, whatever it was." And he said, "All right, come on, going that way. I'll show you where to go." So that was really nice. I thought people were very welcoming when I first got there. And plus I think because I was a bit of a novelty as well. People were asking me questions about London and about England, and so. But I know I settled very quickly, actually. So
well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it brought its own difficulties because I mean it was such a big change at 14, and fashions in those days weren't as international as they are now. I mean, there's not a lot of difference with Europe and North America in fashions. In those days, it was quite a big difference. So, not only every time I opened my mouth, I stood out, the clothes I was wearing were totally different. So that was a big change. I had to adapt very quickly. So, because what you want to do at 14 is fit in. You don't want to stand out. You want to be like everyone else. So, but yeah, most of my memories of Lorne Park are very happy ones, actually.
That's great. Well, before we continue, everyone, this is Steve Maxworthy. He attended my high school, and just realizing that, he just released an album called Chasing Rainbows last year, and one of the songs is A Rainy Weekend in Paris. I'd like to find out what that came about. Did you ever go to Paris in that one?
Yes, that's actually a true story.
I'd like to hear about that one.
That is about somebody I was very close to at Lorne Park. And up until recently, we were still in touch, funnily enough. Sadly, we're not now. But we all, when I came back to England after leaving Canada, we kept in touch. And she had gone to see some family in Germany. So I suggested, really, it was off the cuff. I said, why don't we meet up in Paris? And so we did. And we had a lovely weekend in Paris, and unfortunately went our separate ways. But yeah, it was a true story. I wrote that. That was in, when was that? The weekend was in 1984. And I wrote that probably very soon after we came back, or I came back. She went back to Germany, and I went back to London. So yeah, it's a true story.
Yeah, wow. 1984 was a good year for me. Of course, I was just finishing up my. Actually, I want to give people my age, so I'll just say that I was in high school. But most of these songs are pretty good. "Chasing Rainbows," "Down by the Lake," "Ontario Girl," and Ontario is where I live and where you had lived for some time. And you also have had a music career, or have a music
Yeah.
career, and you attended the church choir. Tell me about that time at St. Stephen's in London. What did you do
St.
there?
Stephen's. Well, that was the primary school or public schools, you would say in Canada, that I attended was known as a church school, where they were affiliated to a local church, and they would always include religious studies within the curriculum. St. Stephen's was the church that our school was connected to. Just one of my friends was in the choir, and he said to me, because I like singing, I always like singing, and I had quite a good voice, probably a lot better than it is now. And my mum was always encouraging me to sing it. And he said, well, why don't you join the choir? And I went, oh, okay. So it was just purely because my friend was there. And, you know, you went down and had an audition to see, obviously, if you were good enough. And I was accepted into the choir. It was great. We got paid for it. It wasn't free. We actually got paid. So we used to do evensong every Sunday night. And we would do weddings if they wanted a choir, which was quite good because, I mean, you know, you didn't get a lot of money, but when I was 8 years old, when I started in the choir, I think we got, if I remember rightly, it was something like 7 and 6 a week. Well, that's the old money, shillings and sixpence. 7 shillings and sixpence. That would be what? In money now, that would be 35 pence, which is around about what? 50 cents.
Oh, wow.
That's what we got a week. But I mean, as an 8-year-old, you know, this would be 1966. So that was quite a lot of money for an 8-year-old. And then if you could do a wedding, you got 5 shillings for a wedding, which is 25 pence in today's money, which again around about 40 cents, I suppose, in Canadian dollars. So if you could do 2 weddings in a day plus your weekly amount, you know, you were getting 17 and 6 a week. That for an 8-year-old, that was a lot of money. That was a lot of money. It's almost £1, you know. So yeah, I mean, I loved every minute of it. I mean, we really did. I mean, we had the whole thing, yeah, with the cassock and the surplice and the ruff, and we had to wear all those. And the only drawback was listening to the sermons, because most of us would try to stay awake. So, you know, all these little choir boys all nodding off through the sermon. But we actually appeared on BBC Radio, where they used to, I don't know if they still do it actually, but they used to go around the country to different churches and broadcast their service. And we just had it one year. They chose our church, so we were broadcast on BBC Radio. But yeah, and then after that, when I left my primary school and went to my secondary school, which was Westminster City, it was called, the choir boys for St. Margaret's, which was the parish church for the House of Commons. If you've ever been to London, you know of Westminster Abbey. St. Margaret's is right. St. Margaret's is in the grounds of Westminster Abbey. A lot of people don't notice it, but it is a separate church in the grounds of Westminster Abbey. Anyway, all the choir boys were taken from a Westminster City school. But again, you had to audition. And I auditioned for that, and again got accepted. And I was there really till my voice started to change, and then I had to give it up. But again, it was great. I mean, we did. I remember because we used to do a lot of weddings there, and Quinton Hogg, who at the time was a government minister, I sang at his daughter's wedding. So it's quite a nice memory. But yeah, I used to love all that stuff.
I would be a bit surprised that a lot of my guest musicians are actually from UK, and I would be a bit surprised if they know all the places you're talking about and say, "I've been there, I went there," because I seem to find that out. And also, a lot of the people from our high school, they actually went to UK, and some went to Scotland, and I don't know if you've seen the alumni list. It shows you the alumni, and it shows you where they're currently living. And I think I've seen that some moved to Poland, others have moved to like Romania, others went back to their country. Yeah,
I know that there used to be an LPSS paper that used to be sent around by email several years back, which stopped for some reason. Which I used to enjoy. Sorry, go on.
You mean the newsletter? Because I was actually the editor of the newsletter back then.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that was great. And that used to give a list of where people were in the world, which it's quite surprising just how many have gone elsewhere. And, you expect obviously some to move around Canada or maybe to the States. But, some have gone to quite, far-flung places, shall we say.
Yeah, you're a staple of our high school. Lorne Park was my home high school for 4 or 5 years. And I'm pretty sure that my family is going to freak out when they see that I interviewed you, because they watch my program. And they're going to say, that's pretty cool. I've always wanted to talk to you because I've seen your name pop up once or twice in like a comment or whatever. I'm like, who's this Steve Maxworthy guy? And you probably know some of my family, I think, because I know it's really interesting that you actually joined your first band at 13. What was your parents' reaction? They say you're 13. It's like you're too young, and here you're playing a guitar and a bass guitar.
Well, I always wanted to play guitar from as far back as I can remember. It probably stemmed from the first time I saw the Beatles on television. Quite honest, I've got a memory of seeing them on television singing "She Loves You," and I remember I would imitate that, sing it in front of my parents. And I remember at school, my primary school, we had this little shed where people used to sit, if it was raining. And I got 3 other guys together, because I knew all the words to "Help," and we pretended to be the Beatles. And I remember I was singing "Help," playing air guitar, and we had all these little girls all sitting around in front of us, all watching, all mesmerized as we played air guitar, and I was singing "Help." So I always wanted to play guitar. It's all I ever wanted to do. And I used to nag my mother senseless, please buy me a guitar. And she wouldn't. My mum always thought she would say it'd be a 5-minute wonder. It's a waste of money. I'm not getting you a guitar. You're not old enough. And she'd buy these little plastic ones, those little toy plastic ones that kids used to have. And I said, no, I want a real guitar. I want a guitar. And I remember at Woolworths in Victoria, there was a guitar. There was a red guitar they were selling. I think it was £12, which again in those days was a lot of money. And so I saved up all my money from being in the choir. Had a win. It was quite traditional in the UK when the Grand National race is on. Everyone has a bet, and my dad always used to put a bet on for me and for my sister at the Grand National. My horse won one year, and I can't remember what I got, but I took the winnings of that, put that in there. I used to keep it on a shelf in the kitchen. So I was going to save up to buy this guitar. And I eventually, I don't know how long it took me, but it took me a long time. I eventually saved up the £12 to go and buy this guitar. And I went to get my money, and my money was gone. And I just went, where's my money? My mum had taken it and put it in the post office savings account for me.
Oh.
And I said, Mum, but what a guitar? No. She said, you can use that for other things when you're older, So I was really upset. Eventually she relented, and bought me a guitar for my 12th birthday. And I just never put it down. I just always just carried it. Everyone was playing it all the time. She got one of these little books for me with chord diagrams in, and I used to sit there and try and learn the chords. And I wanted to play bass purely because I wanted to be Paul McCartney. He was my hero. I was very disappointed I was never born left-handed. That upset me because I wanted to be Paul McCartney playing left-handed bass.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah, look, so I taught myself bass. And we formed this band with some friends. I mean, we weren't very good, to be honest with you. I mean, we were probably all right for 13-year-olds. We weren't very good. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. We used to play, and we had one guy, I mean, he's still a musician today, a friend of mine, Len. Even at 13, he was a brilliant pianist. And so he was really the one that was kept it all together. I was playing bass because nobody else wanted to, and I wanted to, so it was fine. And my parents were really supportive about it. Yeah, they said, yeah, go for it. You know, it was great. It was a lot of fun. As I say, we weren't very good, but it was a lot of fun. And the drummer, Paul, the drummer, I mean, he still drums today. He's been in various bands all through his years. The other guy sadly passed away a few years back, but yeah. So I guess 13 is quite young to do that sort of thing, but we were all just mad on music, so you know, we had that in common. And Len, the guy that's a great pianist, he was a very good guitarist as well. He taught me a lot on guitar. I used to go to his house. He lived in Chelsea, and I used to go to his house a lot. We'd play guitar together. He taught me picking technique and taught me a lot more chords that I didn't know. So he was a great help. So.
Do you remember the name of that first band name? Like you mentioned, you belong.
Yeah, well, we had arguments about it because I just started to get into Black Sabbath because they'd come out, yeah, and I'd really started to get into them. So I wanted to call us Evil Roots. Paul wanted to call ourselves the Four Stars, which I thought was a bit naff. So we never actually settled on a name because we could never agree. But so it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was I mean, it didn't last very long. I mean, it was, you know, 6 months or 9 months, something like that. And then very soon, we were planning to move to Canada anyway, you know. So it all sort of just petered out. And Paul and I, because Paul was my next door neighbor, we still used to play together. Because he had his drum kit, and I used to go around with my guitar because we were just neighbours. So we used to play together for a lot, even after that. But yeah, no, the band didn't last very long. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, though. It was a lot of fun. I remember we did a good version of Get Back, and that was the one and only time I ever played lead guitar because it was fairly simple to play. John Lennon wasn't a great lead guitarist, so it was fairly simple to play. The one thing, my one bash at lead guitar was playing Get Back. After that,
do you find a difference between playing a bass guitar and an acoustic guitar? And what brand of bass guitar was that? Was that like a Gibson or a Taylor? I think you mentioned the name of it.
I had a Fender bass, which
Fender,
I played
yes.
for. Yeah, it's funny. I prefer Fender bass. I'm not a great lover of Fender for electric guitars. I prefer a Gibson. I've got a Strat and I've got a Telecaster. I'm not a lover of the Strat. I rarely play it.
Oh wow!
But I prefer playing the Les Paul. The only problem on the Les Paul, it's so bloody heavy. So I've got there. I've got the Telecaster that I've got there.
Telecaster, wow.
Yeah, which I like. I do quite like that, and it's quite light as well, which it's nice. But these days, I tend to play more acoustic these days. Really, I only really use the electric guitars when I've been recording, because you know it's to layer the sounds and that. So when I gig now, I tend to just do acoustic sets because it's just me. So I'm not one for having all loopers and various backing tapes because I think it's just a bit cheating personally. So I prefer just to have me and the guitar and you know, just do it from there. So saying if any songs that I've recorded, they're not the same when I play them live, because I'm just purely doing them acoustically. Obviously, when you've recorded, you know, you've done a proper production on it. But you know, I enjoy playing just me and an acoustic, and it's easy. You don't have to carry a lot of gear around either, so so that makes life easier.
Are you a PV person?
PV.
Oh, because the speaker and the equipment is usually from PV.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, I don't even know what brands my amps are actually. I've got all my PA system. I've got a PA system, but generally where I've been playing, they've usually got their own PA, or there's been a DJ there playing as well, and I plug into his system. So all I've got to do is take my mic and the stand, and I plug into their system. So it makes life a lot easier. I don't even have to carry the amps around. But I've got them. I mean, they're I don't even know what the make it is, to be honest with you. Can't remember. I don't have I mean, I like Marshall amps because they've got a great sound. Well, I used to use a lot of Fender twin reverbs, quite a lot. Used to use those as well. I don't really have a preference as long as I can get a fairly decent sound. I'm not one of these purists saying, "Oh, I've got to have this, and I've got to have this sound, I've got to have this pedal on it." I can't be bothered with all that. You know, I mean, it's just a personal thing. I mean, as long as I can plug in, people can hear, and it sounds okay, then I'm happy. I'm fairly, you know, I don't really look for, you know, it's got to be a particular sound. As long as it sounds okay, and I'm in tune, and people can hear it okay, you know, that's fine for me. You know, so I don't have any particular preference. You know, as I say, I can't even think what, you know, name the main amp I've got. It's in my garage at the moment. I don't think I pulled it out in a year. I can't even remember what it's called. Sounds all right though, so that's okay.
So if you did a blind bass guitar test, like if they blindfolded you and they handed you a Fender, a Gibson, a Taylor, and maybe two others, and they told you to play each one, would you know which one was the Gibson and which one was the Taylor and which one was the Fender by the sound?
Well, I'd know the Fender purely because I know where the controls are. So, you know, they've all got, because they've got a particular shape as well. Fender's all got a particular shape. And the controls are in the same place. So I'll pick out the Fender straight away. Gibson is like, yeah, I mean, I probably would. But I tend to stay with Fenders for bass because I like the sound. I do like a Rickenbacker bass, and I've never had one. I have played one, which is great. And a Yamaha bass I've played as well, which is what I've got now. I've got a Yamaha bass. Because I sold my Fender. I don't know why I sold it. I mean, I've had so many guitars over the years. I've sold and bought them, and bought them again, and then sold them again, because I go through stages of, well, I don't want this one guitar anymore. I'm going to go for something different. But I tend to, the one I've been most comfortable with has always been a Fender. It doesn't matter whether it's precision or jazz or whatever. Just a Fender in general, I like. I think they make really good, solid basses. But I'd like to have a Rick, because when I've played one, I think it's got a great sound. I've never owned one, and I did have a chance to buy one. Funny enough, when our band started in the 80s, I had to get a new bass because the one I had was just falling apart, and I had a choice of the Fender or a Rick. And I didn't know which one to go. And what swayed me, threw in a free case with a Fender. So I went with the Fender because I got a free case out of it, free flight case out of it. But I've often wondered, maybe I should have gone with the Rick then and just bought a case later. But you know,
that's amazing, my friend.
It's as I said, I mean, I've lost count. Be honest with you, I've lost count of how many guitars I've had and how many I've got rid of, and I've probably regretted every one I've got rid of. Except for maybe one or two which were rubbish. Somebody said to me a long time, never ever sell a guitar. And I thought, it was silly, you know, I've got so many. It went through a stage where I wasn't doing anything, and they were just sort of collecting dust and getting in the way. And I thought, oh, it's silly. I just get rid of them. I need one or two. I don't need all these guitars. And I sold everything. And then about a year, and then about a year or two later, I thought, did I do that for? And then I went around buying guitars again. So, it's so now I've actually made a point that I won't sell any more guitars now. Much to my wife's annoyance, because she gets fed up with all the guitars lying around. She keeps saying to me, "Why do you need more than one guitar?" Which I do say, "Well, why do you need more than one pair of shoes?" So, yeah.
Oh, burn.
Well, the other one is horse rugs as well, because we've got horses, and she's always buying horse rugs. And I say, how many horse rugs do you need? I mean, we've got them everywhere. In our garage is full of them. At the stables is full of them. In my office, I've got them in there. In the storage part of my office, just saying, how many horse rugs do you need? So she doesn't say too much about the guitars when I mention the horse rugs.
Well, my friend, that I've found out that you actually were part of the group Nightstalker. And
yes, indeed, yeah.
I have a friend who loved Nightstalker, and she
really?
finds out that I had a member of the group on my podcast. She'll freak. But before we talk about that, I want to ask you, do you clean and repair your own bass guitars, or do you have to take it into a professional person?
No, I don't do anything. I've got to be the laziest person there is when it comes to looking after guitars. I mean, I always have to be reminded to change strings. I mean, I'm incredibly lazy when it comes to. If there's anything wrong with it, no, I'll take it in to a shop, because one, they'll do a better job than I would anyway, and do it a lot quicker. And as I said, I just can't be bothered with all that. To me, all I want to do is be able to pick up and play, and as long as it sounds all right, that's okay. Funny enough, it's one thing I wanted to. I've got a resonator, which doesn't have an amp in it, a pickup in it. So that's one thing I'm going to do, is get a pickup in that, because I want to use that for live gigs. It's great for recording, but you have to mic it up, and it's got such a great sound. But people say, "Oh, you could do that. Put a pickup in yourself." I'd rather just take it to a guitar store and say, "Right, you do it, and I'll pick it up in an hour's time, or whatever, next week when you've done it," because they'll do a better job than I will anyway. So, but no, I'm very lazy when it comes to that. I can't be bothered with it all. I'll be honest with you. If you look at most of my guitars, there's so much dust on them. I have to clean them before I can go and do a gig, because they have to put a rag in so clean up underneath the strings and that, because they just get covered in dust. I'm just so lazy.
And I'm always thinking, like, what do you consider to be the heaviest, the bass guitar or the acoustic guitar?
The heaviest guitar that I play is the Les Paul. It's incredibly heavy. The bass guitar is heavier than the acoustic. The acoustic's fairly light. I mean, I've got an Ovation, which is the one I use most of the time. I've got a 12-string, which I really like, but I don't gig with it much, purely because some songs don't lend itself to a 12-star, and I can't be bothered to keep switching guitars and switching leads and things like that. Again, I told you I'm lazy, so I'll just stick with one guitar. It's just easier. But yeah, I mean, a bass guitar is heavier than an acoustic, but the heaviest is the Les Paul. They are really heavy guitars. I mean, which is one of the things that gives its unique sound. I mean, it's got such a great sound. But yeah, they're heavy. To play those all throughout a gig, your shoulder does start to ache, But even now, when I play, I don't even stand up anymore. I sit down. I sit on a stool now. I've become that lazy.
Wow.
That when I gig, I sit on a stool. I can't even be bothered to stand now. It's just much easier to sit down on a stool. And I just pretend that it's just I'm sitting at a party somewhere. I much prefer that now to the days when we were prancing around on stage and jumping about, and it's. I think I'm looking for the easy route all the time.
So tell us about your time in Nightstalker. What happened there, and do you still contact the other members?
No, one of them, Andy, lives in the States now. I mean, we're still in contact, but he lives in the States. Dave, who was the lead singer, unfortunately died a couple of years back. He passed away. He had cancer, That was very sad. We were still in touch, and I'd still pop round and see him, and we'd sit and get the guitars out. But that's actually what really did for the band, because we had a very amount of success, but we ran into a lot of management problems, a lot of financial mismanagement. There was a lot of internal problems. Dave's drinking, unfortunately, became a huge problem for the band. He became an alcoholic, and it became to the point where it was affecting how the band was functioning. We ended up with in legal arguments with our management, and it got to the point that, what is the point of doing this anymore? We weren't seeing money. Money was disappearing. We weren't seeing any of it, and we were broke. We were broke. That was the thing. I ended up working in a pub because I had no money.
Wow.
I had no money, so I ended up working in a pub. And it just got a point for what's the point? What is the point of this anymore? We couldn't. We asked for a copy of our contract, which miraculously nobody could find. It disappeared.
Oh, wow.
Because when you're young, when you're in your 20s, and somebody says, we're going to make you a star, sign here. You sign everything that's put in front of you. I mean, because you believe it, and then you realize you signed your life away. Columbia Records in New York took one of our videos. I have no idea what even happened. We could never find out. And in the end, we just said, what's the point? Just what's the point? And we all just sort of thought, well, our drummer, Chris, he went and joined another band. Andy, I think his wife at the time, she wasn't happy about his involvement with the band. It was causing him personal problems. Dave's drinking. Oh,
wow.
And the money. I mean, it was just all sorts of different problems. I mean, it's not an uncommon story when you speak to a lot of musicians go through exactly the same thing. And so we just called it a day. Just thought enough's enough, and we all just sort of went our separate ways. We didn't speak. I don't think any of us spoke for a number of years, quite a long time. Because I moved to France. I had a little a studio in my loft in my house in France. So I used to try and keep my hand in, I did a bit of session work, which didn't really lead to much. Tried to start another band with Andy, if I remember. Yeah, Andy and I tried to start another band. We were going to get a female singer because we thought we'd go in a completely different direction. But again, that didn't work. We just couldn't get it together. And you come to a point when it's not working. You think, oh, well, I've got to do something else. So I moved to France, which I loved. I have to say, I loved living in France. I'd go back there tomorrow. And was there I had a house there for about 9 years. I lived there full time for 2 years, and then moved to South Africa. And left the music business completely. I was working in animal welfare.
Yeah.
Which again, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was great, and because nobody knew of anything about my music career out there, so it was great. It was just like a complete change of life. I did get back into it because some DJs, there's a big thriving club scene in Cape Town where I was living, and the DJs there, I got to know quite a lot of them. And then they knew about my music career, and they asked me if I would do all their bookings for them. I'm fed up with arguing with club owners and problems of getting paid. So they said, we need someone to do it for us. Would you do it? So I said, oh, okay, well, why not? And that was good. That was great. I did that for a number of years out in Cape Town. We had most of the top DJs in Cape Town I looked after, do all their bookings for them, and make sure they got paid, negotiate the fees. And then I started to realize just how much I missed music myself, and then started to get back into it. My marriage split up well in Cape Town. It was very difficult. So I decided to come back to the UK. And I'd met someone else in Cape Town, so we both came back to the UK. And decided to start a family, and I got back into the music again. Started to sort of rebuild it. Got into radio. I was asked to. The guy I was playing with was at he was a DJ at a radio station. He said to me, "Have you ever thought about doing it?" I said, "No, I haven't really, but I think I could be good at it because I can talk, as you may have noticed." So he said, "You'd be good at it. Come down to the radio," and I ended up with my own show. That was with Saint FM, and that led to more involvement getting back into music again after all, after quite a long time. So, it's which I must admit, I'm loving it now. I'm loving it again. It's great. I mean, because I think the difference now is I don't have any expectations. I just enjoy what I do. If it works and it goes somewhere, great. If it doesn't, I don't care. I just love doing what I do. I just love playing. I love writing songs. And if I can write a song that somebody says, "Yeah, that's good," then I love it. I love it. That gives me more pleasure than anything. The creative process.
Yeah, that's true. I noticed that when you released that single Ice Queen, when you were at Nightstalker, did you think that your group was going to move on to something big? Because we're thinking, if it never disbanded, then you wouldn't have left the music business. You wouldn't have moved to South Africa in '96, worked in animal welfare. Do you think that signing with Bellaphon Records would have taken that group to a Rolling Stones type status, or
Well,
what was your feelings on that?
That's what we hoped. I mean, that's what we hoped, because we had a good following, and it was building. The momentum was building all the time, and whenever we played, we noticed that there was more and more people coming to see us, and we were getting recognized. We were getting a lot of attention. So that's what we hoped. It's just that the management, I just, to this day, I still don't know what happened. It was just such a mess. It came to head. I mean, there's two things that stand out in my mind. I think it was one of the when it really was going somewhere. We were booked to play at this club in South London, and there was quite a lot of bands playing, or different acts playing that night. We were headlining. We were asked to go on, and we were due to go on about 10 o'clock. I think it was about 10 o'clock, but it was running late. Normally when we played, we'd go sit in a bar, have a drink, and we would chat to people. We got to the point we couldn't be in the bar. People wouldn't leave us alone. I mean, we were just literally being patted on the back. We'd being pushed forward and things like that. Our guitars were on stage. They were getting knocked over. So we had to remove all our guitars. We had to go sit in the upstairs of the club to get out of everybody's way, because nobody would leave us alone. And then when we didn't go on till about midnight, I think it was, which was, it was much later than planned. Trying to walk to the stage, I mean, we were fighting through, trying to get people grabbing at us and things like that. And I remember Mickey Most was there. He was in the audience, and guy from the band Orange Juice. Remember that? Remember Orange Juice?
Yeah.
In the 80s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know a guy. He was in the audience. And we started playing, and it was bedlam. It was just total bedlam. Because it was so cramped. Dave's amp got shut off because there were so many people. So they've got roadies there trying to get the amp to work. He's trying to guitar. They got his going. Then my amp got shut off, and we ended up. We did 2 numbers, and then the police came to shut us down, because there was so many people and so much noise. Wow. That the police were called, and they shut us down. So we quickly went and did a rock and roll medley. We always used to finish off with a rock and roll medley. So I said, let's do the rock and roll medley. Let's just do it. And we went into it. And what we used to do to annoy our drummer, because we'd do, I mean, I think we'd started with Roll Over Beethoven, Blue Suede Shoes, Mean Woman Blues, At the Hop, just one after the other. And we'd finish up again just at the end of Roll Over Beethoven again. Well, Dave used to look at me, and what we used to do is then go into status quo numbers, because they're all built around the same 12 bar blues. And our drummer used to go, because he'd be getting tired whacking away doing all these rock and roll numbers, and we suddenly see drumsticks come flying towards our heads because he was so worn out. We just keep it going. But yeah, that was a real high point. But yeah, it was better than Police Come and Closed Us Down, and that's when we thought, yeah, this is going to work. And then it was soon after that, I can't remember the timeline. We were booked to do a gig at the Embassy Club in London, which was a huge venue. We were going to be the support act for a band called The Gas. And we knew The Gas because they were from our part of London. We knew them from long ago, from when we were kids. So we knew The Gas anyway. And we had a bit of a rivalry. They were much more high profile than we. They were signed with Polydor. And we thought, well, this is good because a lot of people said, oh, you're much better than The Gas. You'll blow them off stage. So we thought this was a really good gig for us, that we'll support The Gas. We can really, and we were rehearsing like mad. And we were doing a lot of promotion for the gig, And then I said to our manager, well, what date is the gig? You actually haven't given us a date. And she said, what do you mean, what date? I said, we're supposed to be playing the Embassy with The Gas. She said, no, you're not. So what do you mean we're not? You've told us we're playing. We've done all this promotion for you. She said, oh, I've never promised you. And that's when it all sort of went, boom. We suddenly thought, hang on, we've been taken for a ride here. And then we started to look into finances, and that was really the beginning of the end then.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so that left quite a bit of taste, because had that gig gone ahead, things would have been totally different. But it wasn't to be, so, these things happen. But yeah, that I think after that, everyone sort of lost interest, sort of thing. Why are we bothering? So.
Well, there's a lot of infighting in bands. For instance, Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze, they can get along with Chris Difford and Paul Carrick and all those, and then Squeeze, of course, disbanded, but then they got back together. And I think Glenn Tilbrook joined the band at some point. And then there's infighting with the Police because Stuart Copeland didn't really like Sting. So what he did is he took his cymbals of his drums and placed it so he didn't have to look at Sting. So he had like the cymbal facing, so when he was drumming on stage. But would you consider that maybe another reason? Another reason why your group disbanded might have been infighting, or was it all because of contract disputes and management disputes?
There was infighting. More or less, pretty much we got along. The only fighting became when Dave's drinking was getting out of hand, and it was affecting him as a musician. He was a really good rhythm guitar player. He was very talented songwriter, but he wasn't writing any songs. He just, and we were trying to keep him out of the bar, wanting him to turn up sober at rehearsals, and that's when infighting started, because it was hurting the running of the band. And unfortunately, it's a shame, because Dave was a hell of a nice guy. He really was a nice guy. He was good-hearted. He would do anything for anyone. In fact, I mean, the amount of money he gave away just to help people. As I said, he was such a good guitarist, such a good songwriter as well. But he couldn't fight off the addiction he had to alcohol. And when I came back from South Africa, because obviously I was in South Africa nearly 7 years. Got back in touch with him. I tried to find him. I phoned his ex-wife, because he got married just before, about a year before I moved to South Africa, so I was away 7 years. Phone is where I assumed he was living. That marriage had split up. That was the second marriage that split up. So I didn't know where he was. I think I phoned his mum, if I remember rightly. And she said, "Oh God, Dave, would love to see you again. Love to get in touch." And she gave me his number. And it was heartbreaking to see him, actually, because he just couldn't function, and he just couldn't shake off that addiction to alcohol. Then, we actually tried to get the band back together again in 2012. For fun. It was really for fun. I wanted to do it for fun. I wasn't thinking about going out and gigging again and starting off a big career. I just wanted it to be fun. And I thought it'd be nice if we could get back in the studio and record again, because there was a lot of songs that we should have recorded and we didn't. Mm-hmm. And on our album, there's a song called California, which I was never happy with the way we recorded it, and I wanted to re-record it because I think we could have done a better job. And I just didn't work because, first of all, we'd be in the studio, say 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning. Dave was already drunk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the first thing you'd hear as we walked in the studio was a can of beer opening.
Oh boy!
And then, and also I think what he found difficult, the power base of the band had shifted, because Dave being the lead singer, being the front man, and again at those times he used to write a lot of the songs as well. In fact, Andy, Dave, and myself all wrote. We all wrote. I tended to write probably a bit more than the others, but we all wrote, and we would write together as well as separately. So it was a good collaboration, because we would have it was a healthy competition. If you wrote a song, you think, oh yeah, that's good. Look, see if I can write a better one than that. But because Dave and Andy hadn't written anything for years, because they just hadn't played. Apart from just noodling about a bit. But I'd kept on writing all those years. So when we went to the studio, there was a couple of old ones we wanted to do. But everyone said, well, we've got any new stuff? And I said, well, yeah, I got these. I had a whole book. So Andy's attitude was, that's great. Yeah, come, let's do these. And we'd go. And he looked at it as, for him, it gave him the impetus to start writing again. Dave looked at it the other way because he really couldn't write anymore. So he didn't like the fact that the power base had shifted away from him to me, even though he was still the front man, and he couldn't deal with that.
Wow.
So he, rather than trying to work with it, he became disruptive. And it just wouldn't work. It just didn't work. And we started, then fights started again. And I just said to Andy, look, I did this for fun, and this isn't fun. And if it's going to be like this, I'm not going to do it. So I decided to walk away, which was a shame, because when it did work, there was a few times where we really hit it. There was a song that Andy and I wrote called Blues for Blues, said he titled, but it was a good song. And we really hit it, and it sounded really good, really as we used to play. So it's a shame it didn't work, because it could have been really good. But I even had the studio phone me complaining that he'd been sick in the toilets and hadn't cleaned it up, and and I thought, oh God, this is I can't go through this again, So yeah, it was a shame. Yeah, it was a shame. But and as I say, Dave sounds like I don't mean to speak ill of Dave, because he was a great guy. He really was, and he was incredibly talented. It was just the downfall was the booze. He just couldn't kick it, and it was sad. It was sad to see. Even so much when he got cancer and he went for his treatment, he even said to them, he said, well, don't spend the money on me. I've had my life. Spend it on kids. And I said, they're going to spend it on the kids anyway. Don't turn down treatment, because those kids are still going to get treatment. You're not saving anything. That's just silly. He said, but I don't, he said, I don't care. He said, let them spend it on kids. So he was refusing treatment. And I saw him literally about 2 or 3 days before he died and went to see him in hospital. And it was sad. He was like a wizened old man. It was heartbreaking to see. He was so thin. And the last words he said to me when I left, I said, look, because I didn't know, obviously, he was going to die a couple of days later. I said, I'll come and see you next week. And the last thing he said to me, and this is just the character of him, he said, love to the family. Yeah. Every conversation we always had, he always ended with love to the family. That was the last words he said to me. And I think it was 2 days later, his brother phoned me and said David died. That was sad, just really sad. It was a shame.
Yeah, it's really sad because I know when my father was dying of cancer, when I went to see him that one day, and before I left, I whispered in his ear, I said, thank you very much for being my father. Jesus loves you. And then I got up, and next morning he died. And I was so upset that I wasn't there for the whole night to see him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a terrible thing when someone has to die of cancer, but especially someone as dignified as your friend there. And you were mentioning earlier about collaborating. Did you collaborate on Ice Queen as well?
No, that was Dave's song, completely. That was Dave's song. Funny enough, we went through it when he wrote that. He actually wrote that as a much slower number, and I think I can't remember what I said. We're doing a lot of slow numbers. We need to rock it up a bit. We tended to drift to doing ballads, and he said, "Well, I've written this one." He said, "I could speed this up. This will be good." I never heard it, the slow version. Never heard the slow version. He just played. I only ever heard that version. But no, that was Dave's song completely. And we spent a lot of time on the recording of that because it was all apart from the lead guitar, which was done by Andy, all the rhythm section was done on the guitars was done by me and Dave. I think Andy was a little bit put out about that because the producer told him not to play. We had a lot of effects on Dave's voice to get this sort of wash effect. I remember spending a lot of time in the studio getting the sound just right on that one. But no, that was Dave's song completely. The only addition, the only thing that I think Andy added was the lead guitar run was Andy's. He came up with the lead runs on that. That was not from Dave. But yeah, no, it was 100% Dave's song. It's a good song.
Did you work with the music video as well? Were you part of it?
Oh, the production of it?
Yeah.
Do you mean? No, yeah. When we were doing the video, we didn't know what to do. Actually, I mean that was the because we were thinking about Ice Queen. How can we portray this in the video? They wanted a performance. But what I had an idea of wearing. Have you seen the video? It's on YouTube.
It's not too bad. I like it.
That one that's on YouTube. That was before it had been fully filtered, and that was the pre-edit version. So the complete version, a lot of the background stuff is blacked out, so you only see the band and the dry ice. I mean, on what's on YouTube, you can see the dry ice machine. So that wasn't the proper version, but it was the only version that I could find. I had an idea at London's Billingsgate market, which was the old fish market, was being decommissioned, and they were moving it. And the refrigeration unit, they said it would take how many years to defrost or whatever. The ice, it was all just complete ice. So I said, could we see if we could get permission to film in Billingsgate in the old refrigeration unit with all the ice around us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We couldn't get permission, unfortunately. So we did it in the studio with dry ice. And we had a model there to play the Ice Queen. But they just wanted a performance. So the wearing of the coats was my idea because it was to convey cold. But that was it. That was as much as our input on it, because we had a producer there, and she said, we just want a performance. I mean, we're miming obviously to the track. But the one thing she did say to us when we were ready to start filming, she said, have you had a drink? So we said, no, not at all. She said, well, get over to the pub, spend an hour in there. She said, I don't want you sober. She said, because it'll hold you back. Go over there and get yourself relaxed. And if you have a look at Dave, he's 3 sheets in the wind. There's one point where he's singing, he's actually swaying back and forth. So if you have a look at Dave, he's quite away with it. But yeah, she wanted us to have a few drinks so we would relax and not be worried about the cameras and things like that. Yeah, she sent us a good hour or 2 hours. We were in the pub before we filmed it. So
that's really sad that Nightstalker couldn't go on for more albums, like 2, 3, 4 albums. You only had that one release of the album, and then like Soho Nights, and then that was it. And then it only lasted 5 years, the group. So tell me about there's a solo album that you wanted to record with Rochester Records in Cape Town, but weren't you afraid that the same thing was going to happen with that then when you were signing on with Nightstalker, because it's like 3 times the charm sort of thing? Now it's 2 times.
Yeah, with Rochester Records, I was speaking to them for behalf of one of the DJs that I was looking after, and they wanted to sign him and record him. So that's why I went to see them. And they happened to be handling distribution of our album, which was surprising. I didn't think anyone was handling it because the sales weren't great. And we got to talking, and he said, you're still playing, still writing. I said, well, I don't play a lot, but I'm still writing, And they said, well, have you thought about doing a solo album? And I said, well, I always think about it. I said, and I made a quip saying, if I record one, I'll say it's about time. I call it It's About Time. Anyway, we just got to talking about it, and we got about negotiations, but it never went any further, unfortunately. And I think my mindset had changed by then. There wasn't this great need, I'm going to make a lot of money, or I'm going to be famous, or whatever. It was just I wanted to get my songs out there, and whatever happened. And that's the way I approach it now. So I wasn't really that concerned, about being. I mean, obviously, I wasn't going to do it for nothing, And if there's royalties to be paid, I would like them, but that's not the driving force anymore. When you're in your 20s and somebody's, wants to sign you to a record label, which is your dream. That's, you do think, wow, we're going to be famous. Everyone's going to know us. We're going to make lots of money. I mean, this is a 22-year-old thinking, well, when I was in my 40s and same things are being said, it was, I take it all with a pinch of salt now. It's not the reason. I get more pleasure now. If there was a young band, and they didn't have many tunes, or they couldn't write their own songs, because not everyone can write songs. And they'd say to me, could we use your songs? I would say, there you go. Take them and use them, because I would get a lot of pleasure out of that. That songs were being heard and being used. Money isn't the driving force. So that would give me a lot of pleasure. If anyone wants to use any of my songs, they can have them with pleasure, because that's just to me to get them heard, and for people to like them, So it's the same with this album that I've done now. Money's not the driving force in that. It was just again, I was approached to do it. It wasn't my idea. I was approached to do it. I'm not 100% happy with it, but I don't think as musicians you ever are, really, But yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to hear me play and hear my music, that's enough for me. That's all, that means more to me. I post a lot of songs on Facebook, and purely because I just want to hear the feedback. If somebody says, yeah, that's a really good song, then I'm happy. I don't matter if anyone listens, if I sell any, I don't care. I just want people to listen to it and people to like it. That, because it makes me feel that, yeah, I do, I can write a song. I can write a song that people enjoy. So, that's the driving force, really.
Is it my impression that the solo album you wanted to sign with Rochester Records, the same songs that you wanted to put on solo album, are the same songs for Chasing Rainbows, or was it a totally different?
A lot of the songs on Chasing Rainbows weren't written when I was talking to Rochester. I think Rainy Weekend in Paris was written. And I think Coming Back Again, I think, was written. The others weren't. They were written afterwards. There was various songs that I had in mind that I wanted to do. The trouble is that I've got something like 200 songs written.
Wow.
And I go through
stages. You could release 6 albums if you want.
Oh yeah, I've got so many. It's ridiculous. But I go through stages. Oh, these are the ones I want to do. And if you ask me 6 months later, I'll be, no, I want to do these ones. So it's how I feel at the time. I go through. I mean, sometimes the songs of mine I haven't played for 5 years. I've forgotten about them, and then I look at my songbook. I'm like, oh yeah, that's all right, that song. Why haven't I played it in 5 years? It's so I go through different stages, and a lot of my songs now, funnily enough, are being influenced from my teenage years in Canada. A lot of them, Down by the Lake, for example, was purely written about growing up around Clarkson and Lorne Park and the antics we used to get up to hanging around the lake. And I used to live in Bassist Drive, so the park on Bassist Drive, we used to hang around there. And you
probably visited Rattray Marsh a few times as well.
Yeah. And Lions Valley Park, we used to spend get up to all sorts of Lions Valley Park. So a lot of songs are now, I mean, I'm sort of a lot of nostalgia is creeping in. I mean, I did a song called Lorne Park Girls.
Hell yeah. I can name 4 of them.
Yeah, which I was purely, again, thinking about when I first started at Lorne Park, seeing all these lovely girls walking around. So I just wrote a song about Lorne Park girls, and how I felt at the time. I wrote a song called White Oaks Park.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd go play tennis.
Yeah, well, we used to get up to in the woods.
Here's one. Here's a song that you didn't write. Hayden Heathcock.
Yeah. Hayden was.
He was a song in himself.
Yeah, he was a good man. Good man. I never had Hayden, funnily enough, but I mean, everyone knew of him. I mean, he was a good man.
He passed a few months ago.
I saw that. Yeah. I wrote a song called "The Satellite" about.
Oh my goodness! You don't want to know what's happening there.
I've heard that there's some sort of development going on there, isn't there?
They couldn't stop it from being dismantled, so they're going to demolish it for a condo. What they were going to do is build a condo on top of it, but they decided to opt to. Oh, and scooters as well. They're going to be tearing that down.
The roller place.
Yeah, it's sad. No, we couldn't save it. Couldn't save it.
Yeah.
So bad.
But somebody had put a post on. I think it was on the alumni site about the satellite, and so I wrote a song about it. Just it was called "Too Many Nights Spent at the Satellite." So there's a lot of
that's cool.
Yeah, I should post them on the alumni site. Funny enough,
you should.
Yeah, but it's so a lot of nostalgia is sort of creeping in on my songs from Canada for some reason now, which you didn't before. So I've got some here. These are songs that I'm just trying to think. What's this one called? These are just new ones I've written. I know there's one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's just talking about sitting in my old Pontiac. I had an old '65 Pontiac. I remember.
That's nice.
There's one here called Lake Ontario. So there's Yeah, so most of my memories of Lorne Park are very happy ones. You know, I had a lot of good friends, and it's nice I've reconnected with so many. In fact, funny enough, one of the songs on Chasing Rainbows, "I've Always Loved You,"
Ontario
that
Girl? Oh, that one. Okay, yeah.
no, "I've Always Loved You." It's about a guy that meets someone that he hasn't seen for years in high school that he always had a thing for. Well, that was purely taken from something that somebody said to me. It was a girl we went to school with. We'd reconnected and we were talking on the phone, and she said to me, "Always wondered what happened to you." Now, purely on that line, that gave me the idea of the song for "I'll Always Love You," and that started me off from there. And I wrote that song around that. That just sparked the idea of bumping into someone you hadn't seen and you had a crush on her. It wasn't written about anyone in particular, but that gave me the idea. So, you know, you get a lot of ideas from just talking to people as well, you know. So it's Ontario Girl came about because I was listening to Rod Stewart's song West Country Girl.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That gave me the idea, and I just thought, you know, what if I come up with something else? And I just Ontario Girl just popped in my head, and I thought, I'll do say Ontario, and I like the idea. I deliberately wrote in, started with Ontario, went to Mississauga, and then to Lorne Park Road. So I brought it each time, trying to bring it closer and closer. And I knew, obviously, anyone that I grew up with would get it. Yeah, from Mississauga to Ontario, Mississauga, then Lorne Park Road. Knew exactly what I was referring to. So that was a deliberate play on
Yeah.
words.
I grew up in Clarkson, and obviously that like Lorne Park was only a 10-minute walk, and then I also attended Hillcrest for 7 and 8, and I attended White Oaks for kindergarten to grade 6. So my schools were within walking distance. I
Within
didn't
that,
have to bother
yeah.
taking a bus. And then I think it was like last 15 years or 20 years when they started busing people, because you had to stay within your own jurisdiction if you wanted to go
That's
to
right.
school. But
Yeah.
now they can bus people from Oakville who want to go and attend school up here and stuff. Yeah. Well, maybe not Oakville, but anywhere in Mississauga. Instead of, you don't want to go to Gordon Graydon, you don't want to go to Glen Forest. I want to go to Hillcrest, or I want to go to Lorne Park. Then yeah, they'll bus you in. Because when I stand at the bus stop before I go to work, I'm always seeing school buses stopping and picking up the kids to take them to like miles and miles away, and it's kind of interesting to watch. But
My
I want
sister,
to ask you.
so she might have been at Hillcrest at the same time you were there.
What's her first name?
Kim.
Kim Maxworthy is your sister?
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that? I never even questioned that. Wow. Okay. Say hi to her for me.
Yeah, I will.
Can you let me know about? I was going to talk about. Shoot, I had a question. Okay, we'll move on. Why did you join a FM radio station? I mean, you got the
Well,
singing voice. Why not just play music and sing? And why this?
I was asked to. I was playing guitar. I used to play guitar with this friend of mine. We used to play together, and we were planning on doing gigs as a duo. He was already, I didn't know, but he was a presenter on Saint FM. And he just approached me one day. He said, "Have you ever thought of presenting a radio show?" I went, "Hadn't really, but you know, I could probably do it because I like to talk." I've got quite a lot of trivia that I know about music. I've got one of these brains that picks up a little bit of information and remember it, which I can bore people with, you know, at parties. And he said, "You know, you got quite a knowledge of music." And he said, "Why don't you know? You could do it. You could present a show." So I went, "Oh, okay, yeah, why not?" I didn't think much more of it. And then the radio station contacted me. We had a meeting, and this what idea have you got for a show? Which I said about playing B-sides, because there's so many great B-sides. People don't realize that the song started off as a B-side, like for example, Maggie May, Rod Stewart's song. That was originally a B-side. You know, I think a lot of people know that, but you know, using that as an example. And they liked the concept. So we started doing it. So yeah, they said, okay, how would you want to do a Saturday show? Which again surprised me because I thought I'd be bunged in some silly, obscure hour. I used to do Saturdays 1 till 3, I think it was. That was great, and I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed doing it. A lot of people from Lorne Park used to listen in. But unfortunately, the radio station closed down. So yeah, well, they got a new license, and they had a new broadcasting area, a bigger broadcasting range. They had to get a new antenna and what have you. So they were going to reinvest in the radio station. They wanted to rebrand it. So they decided to close it down and reopen it a year later under a new name and with a new frequency and things like that. I thought it was a big mistake because I thought you'll lose your audience. If you're not around for a year, they'll just go somewhere else. They should have rebuilt it and kept going and then done a switch over. Anyway, that's what happened. And what happened that year they were closed, they ran out of money.
Oh, wow.
They ran out of money.
It's always money, yeah?
Yeah. It was a mess. It was a stupid decision, and it was a mess. It ended up a mess, ended up a complete and utter mess. With the guy I was mentioned, I was playing guitar with Joe because he was an actor actually. He used to he was one of these jobbing actors. Used to do a lot of TV work, a lot of stuff like that. And he said to me, "Why don't we see if we can take over Saint? We'll buy Saint, and we'll run it." So we were in negotiations with them to see if we would buy the radio station, take it over. That never happened.
Oh, wow.
But one of the other guys that was negotiating with us, Chris, he again was a jobbing DJ when the name of Badger. He used to do all the clubs, big following. He decided to start his own radio station because we couldn't come to an agreement with Saint. So he started SMC. And he approached me and he said, just bring your show to the same show you do at Saint, will you do it at SMC? And I resisted for about a year, I think, because I suddenly thought, I like having my weekends back and I don't really feel like, because there's quite a lot of research has to go into it, you know, for the show I do, because I do a section on songs you didn't know were cover version. And that takes quite a bit of research now. There was a lot I knew, but, you know, if you're doing that every week, you don't want to keep repeating it. So, you know, three weeks ago, I played this song. And I don't like to repeat, so I like to keep it different every week. Anyway, after a year, he approached me again and said, you know, really would like you to join, you know, because it was a good show. I just think it would fit in well with Saint, with SMC. So I agreed. And he said, what do you want to do? What slot do you want to do? He gave me a choice. So I could really pick and choose my slot. And it was quite handy when my wife spends most Sunday afternoons at the stable, so I don't see her anyway. So I thought, while you're doing the horses, I'll do the radio show. So now I do it the 4 till 6 on a Sunday, which I enjoy it. I must admit, I do enjoy doing it, and I like doing, especially the part of songs you didn't know were cover versions. That I enjoy the research into that and surprising people with songs that they didn't realize that they were cover versions. So, and a lot of it surprises me. I mean, when I find out, of course, I didn't know that, you know. So one of the ones that I'm doing, I'll give you a little preview of this Sunday show. Elvis's first single release was "That's All Right, Mama." Yeah, that song. That was his first the first record he released. So "That's All Right, Mama," which is, you know, in rock and roll standard that everyone knows. You know, so many people have done it. Well, I've got the original from 1946.
Oh, wow.
Blues number, yeah. So I'm playing that.
He was pretty young back then.
Well, that wasn't Elvis. I mean, Elvis did it in what, 54, 55, something like that. But the original was from the original version. I can't remember the guy's name. Actually, I got it written down on my notes. Released it in 1946. So that's one of the songs I'll be playing. the original version of That's All Right, Mama. So yeah, so that sort of thing. I think, you know, to me, I find it interesting anyway. Yeah. So yeah.
What's interesting, Steve, is that you mentioned earlier that you've written 200 songs. That's 200 experiences, and each song was probably written according to where you were or what you were thinking or who you met, like Ontario Girl, for instance, Harbor Lights, and I've Always Loved You, which is another one you're talking about, Coming Back Again. Do you have like a stipulation if anything happens to you? Let's say that, you know, you're incapacitated or whatever. Will your family, what will stop them from releasing your music? Like, for instance, with Prince, there's still music out there that Prince and Michael Jackson wrote, of music that you could probably release 20 or 30 more Prince albums.
Yeah.
So what's
No.
stopping you from releasing these songs?
Well, time is one thing, because it takes a lot of time. If you're doing it on your own, I mean, with the album, we started recording that in November, I think it was, and it wasn't ready for release till August. It's an awful lot. I mean, it's a long time, because I'm doing everything on my own. So first off, so there was only me and a producer. So there was a lot of overdubbing, a lot of takes, because the producer worked me. He really worked me. Where I would have said, "Oh, that's good enough," he said, "No, it's not. You can do it better." He pushed me hard, but it was good, because it's, you know, he got the best performance out of me, and I mean, there was, you know, on some of those vocal tracks, there's 8 vocals on one track. I mean, you know, so there was an awful lot of work to be done. In fact, as I say, there's a couple I would have preferred to redo, but I just got to the point when I said, you know, we've just got to release it, otherwise it's just going to go on and on and on, you know. So that's one thing, and also it's the cost of it as well. I mean, people don't work for nothing, you know, in studio time, it all costs money. So there's that. I wanted to see what the I mean, I'm not saying I won't do another one. I may well do. I want to see what the reaction was to this one first. I mean, royalties are starting to filter through, and nothing is going to change my life. But I mean, it is starting to filter through. So it is being played or being listened to. So we'll see. I mean, you know, I'm not ruling it out. I may well do. I may possibly do another one this summer. I haven't entirely made up my mind yet, but I may do another one this summer. I'm waiting for some money to come through, which should hit soon. So once that comes through, then that gives me a little bit more freedom. So it's not 100%, but I may. I know the producer that I used does want to do another one. He's contacted me several times, said, look, we should do another one. But at the moment, I haven't made up my mind. It really depends on how well this one does. I mean, if nobody's going to listen to it, then, you know, because I want people to listen to it. You know, that's the thing. I don't want to just put it out there for the sake, oh, look, I've done another album. Nobody's listening to it. Then what's the point? You know, it's not the question of money. I mean, I don't care if I make any money out of it or not. I just want people to listen to it. So, you know, so I'm looking at the figures. I mean, they're starting to build recently. They're starting to build up a lot more. It's taken a little bit to get going, but it's starting to get going. The same royalties are starting to slip through. So we'll see.
Well, that's a reason for this podcast, to promote people's talent like yours and to get people to notice, but also just to just find out what makes a musician tick, what makes you tick, what makes why you do what you do, what you play, why you play this instrument. I noticed that you also play keyboards and recorder. Do you still play the keyboards, or you rather just play the bass guitar?
I'd rather play guitar. I want to. I mean, my keyboard playing is not very good. I mean, it's, you know, I do want to get better on it. That's one of my aims, is to get better at keyboards. I've got quite a nice little keyboard setup, and I can do a little bit, playing out a few chords, but it's not great. I mean, I certainly wouldn't play live on keyboards. I'd be too embarrassed. But I'd like to get to the point where I'm a bit more competent than I am, where I feel comfortable doing it. So that is an aim. Recorder, I don't think I've picked up a recorder for years. I've still got it. Still got one. That was pretty good on a recorder, actually. Funny enough, that was besides the choir, that was my stage debut playing recorder. My sister and I were at a holiday camp. Must have been 1969, 1970. We both learned recorder at school, and we went on stage and played recorder at a talent show. We've got a picture of it somewhere. My sister and I playing the recorder on stage. I mean, we played Lord of the Dance. That was one of the ones we played. But yeah, so I've actually used it in one of the songs for Nightstalker we were going to record, called The Cross. We never got around to it, but actually I played recorder on that at one point, just to see if it would work, and it did work. So that, but yeah, I've still got it. All school kids learn recorder at one point or another, don't they?
Yeah, we had Mr. Baker in music in White Oaks, and played the recorder, and then Mrs. Holmes. So I loved the recorder. I started playing the recorder. I wanted to get in playing the flute. I might even take up the flute again, but I can play a few songs in recorder still. But I still have this one from public school, the white one, and then you have the brown one. But I really want to get one of those professional wooden ones. What was the pandemic like for you? Especially UK was really hit.
Yeah, it's I mean, everything was shut down. It was all the pubs shut down, the restaurants shut down. It was God, yeah. It just couldn't do anything. Everything was shut. Then when they did start a reopening, they put restrictions on them.
Well, what about you? What happened to you during the pandemic? You and your wife and your kids, how did you manage? Did you play music, write music?
I was still writing. Couldn't play anywhere because everything was shut down. I was still writing. I always write, even if I'm not involved in music. I mean, I just can't break the habit. It's. I think my brain works like that all the time. I've always got sort of ideas floating around in my head. My kids weren't at school, so I mean, they loved that. They thought it was great. And it was summer. We had a nice summer, so they spent most of the time in the pool and in the garden. They had a great time. My wife, because we got horses, she had to go to the stables anyway, because you can't leave the horses. You can't ignore them. What they did at the stables is that everyone had a time slot to go and do their work on their horses, the mucking out and the feeding and stuff like that. So that was awkward, because you can't guarantee how long it's going to take you to do your work with your horses there. Sometimes it can be quick, other times it can be quite long. So that was difficult, because they weren't allowed to have more than 6 people there and had to social distance, for me, most of the time I spent in the garden. Most of the time in the garden or walking the dogs. It was, but I was fortunate enough that I still had an income coming in. So financially, it didn't affect me at all. But it was just a nightmare. You just couldn't do anything. Couldn't go anywhere. I like going over to France. I like to still go back and spend a lot of time there. I couldn't go. In fact, I haven't been to France since the pandemic, actually, mainly because my passport's expired. I just haven't bothered getting it renewed. But that sort of thing where you think, oh well, let's pop over to France, because you can do that very easily from the south of England. You just jump on a ferry or jump on the train, and you're there in an hour and a half. You can't do that. You couldn't do it. You couldn't, and then there was the restrictions. If you didn't have the vaccine, they wouldn't let you in, or all these sort of things. That it was very, very, very hard, and it was just normal life was just gone. It was, and the
Yeah.
businesses that went out, the people that suffered that went out, there's people that lost their jobs, and it's absolutely horrendous. I mean, I'm I know you went through a similar thing in Canada as well, because I was talking to friends out there, and
Yeah.
you do a thing, and then of
Even
course you
now,
saw.
Walmart's are closing down. A few companies are closing down. Some are closing their doors because of the pandemic. Really did a number on them. The one with us, that we were working from home for 2 years before we went back last May. Was very looking forward to having you on the podcast, and we really appreciate you and the interview and learning about you and Nightstalker and Ice Queen. It was awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
it's my pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's. I mean, it's funny enough, talking about pandemic. Most of my time was sitting posting songs on Facebook. Every 2 or 3 days, I would post another one because I was so bored. I just kept posting songs on Facebook. I kept calling them my lockdown songs. So still in lockdown. Here's another one. But if you go on my Facebook page, you'll see them. There's just hundreds of them.
Yeah, I was watching one of you. Someone was recording you playing the guitar in was that a bar or a diner? I'm not sure.
It was in a restaurant. It was the charity gig.
Restaurant.
Yeah, it was just a few
Yeah,
days ago. It was the charity gig at a restaurant. It was a charity gig for prostate cancer. So they had a fundraiser, and I was just asked to play. And they had a DJ there. There's John Conte was there. Funny, remember John Conte, the light heavyweight world champion in the 70s?
No, I don't think I am. I don't think I'm
Yeah, he
familiar
was.
with.
He was light heavyweight world champion. So it's about 76, something like that. Yeah, he was there to support them, and it was a good night actually. They raised a lot of money. So yeah, that was Tuesday this week actually. So it's fairly recent. But yeah, no, I mean there's that's the way I like to play now. Just sitting on a stool. Sitting on a stool is easy. I'm lazy. I don't want to make an effort out of it.
Well, everyone, we enjoyed the interview with Steve Maxworthy. Check in the description below for his album Chasing Rainbows, which is currently streaming on all platforms, I believe, or just Spotify.
Yeah, all platforms. Yeah, all Amazon, Google. I think there's something like I think it was like 27 or 29 streaming sites, maybe even more. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, so there's all platforms. The main platforms like Google and Amazon and Spotify and YouTube. You will find it.
And check out the video for Ice Queen and information where you can find Steve on Facebook and social media, and give him some love and follow him. And he's a member of my high school, and he was attending there. And also, we've had several musicians come out of Lorne Park, like, for instance, Susie O'Neill. Yeah, so J.D. Fortune fronted In Excess. His mother and himself went to Lorne Park, Susie O'Neill as well. There's a few others that attended Lorne Park that, went out and were successful musicians.
There's also if you look on YouTube, I'm sure he's on Spotify as well. Jim Diamond is actually Jim Boynton from Lorne Park Secondary School. I play his stuff on my radio show. Check him out. Very, very
There
good.
you go, everyone. Jim Diamond.
Great
Not
album.
bad.
I'll do a plug for Jim because he's a good friend of mine called Friends and Family. It's a brilliant album. He lives in the States now, but that's doing very well in the charts and the indie charts in the States. So
wow,
Jim Diamond. The Jim Diamond Review. In fact, you should get him on your podcast. I'll speak to Jim. You should get him on your podcast. He's a good guy.
Yeah, let us know that. We were kind of thrilled, and you were a member of Nightstalker, and we were going to wonder if you played with any of the other greats.
No, I've jammed with a few. I think my biggest claim to fame is doing some recording work for MPL, which is Paul McCartney's publishing company. Never got to meet Paul McCartney, I'm afraid. That would have been, I would have died a happy man if I met Paul McCartney. But no, I was asked, when was this? Just before I moved to France. But about 1996, I think it was. I was asked by them to record a Buddy Holly song for the Buddy Holly convention that goes every year. And what they were doing, they were just having musicians that cover Buddy Holly, and it was played all through the convention. So I did Peggy Sue because I had my own little recording studio. So I did Peggy Sue, sent it off to them, and I got a little letter of thanks from MPL and that, which I don't have anymore. Unfortunately, I think my ex-wife threw it away. I'm thinking when we split up, we'd take that. But yeah, so that was my biggest claim to fame. Jammed with Mick Mullins, who was the lead singer of Modern Romance. Do you remember Modern Romance? Do you remember them in the 80s?
I don't think I do. Are they a UK band, or are they known in the
They
States?
were a UK band. They had a big hit with what's called "Best Days of Our Lives." I don't remember that
Okay.
or not. Jammed with him a few times. He was a good guy. So I mean, there's quite a few people that I met through. We use the same studios as rehearsal studios. Toya Wilcox, Police. I was going to tell you a story about the Police, wasn't I? If you were interested. They because we used the same rehearsal rooms as them, and we turned up one day to our rehearsal room, and there were the Police outside their rehearsal room, bashing the living daylights out of each other. They were literally the three of them having a full-on fist fight. Everyone was just standing around mesmerized watching the Police bash the life out of each other. But,
this is amazing.
Yeah. I met Phil Lynott before he died, and Snowy White, Thin Lizzy, met them. I met a lot of people over the years throughout the business, that used to run into people at gigs or parties or things like that. So it was a good time. It was a good fun time. So.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I'm so happy that we were able to get you on the podcast and talk to you and learn so much about you. And everyone's going to wonder, Lorne Park Secondary School, what school is that? And then go and check it out.
Shout out
yeah.
Big shout out from Lorne Park.
Yeah, and I'll have to, I don't know when you're going to come this way again, but I should plan a reunion when you're here. Like let me know 5 months in advance.
I'd like to. I want to make another trip. My daughter wants to come over again because she thoroughly enjoyed herself when we went over in 2018. So I would like to make another trip. And my sister, I think, would like to. She when did she go? Her last trip, I think, was 2017. So I think I've spoken to my sister about it. Maybe we should go together and take my daughter. And so yeah, it's certainly in the offing that. We'll make another trip over because I'd like to see some more people as well that I missed the last time around.
Well, let me know because I think in 2017 or 2018, last time you were here, I think the 10 restaurant was still around, the one on here in Ontario, because it's now called the Port House. They changed the name in the last few years. And usually I would have the reunion there upstairs in the reunion room. Let me know in advance that you have a date set, and then I'll plan it knowing that you and your daughter and your sister would be up here. I like to see Kim again. And also, so really happy that you were able to be on the podcast, and we look forward to further communication. You're very welcome. And everyone, we're going to end this stream. Thank you. Just stick around. We'll talk to you for a minute. So everyone, see you, Steve.